Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Kaba Ilco number 7124LA1-04-KD. A1, I'm not exactly sure. Well, I know what A1 means, but I'm not sure how it applies to this cylinder. It doesn't matter. Let's move on. The 7124, this is a relatively unusual cylinder, and here it is. Relatively unusual because of its very small, short length. This is a 3/4 inch cylinder. Keyways are going to be a bit limited on this one. This is an LA keyway, and we're going to investigate what LA means, that's for sure. 7124. We sell a handful of these every year, and where people use tiny little mortise cylinders is when they have tiny little thin doors. Old style mortise locks that are 100 years old, no exaggeration. And the fact that this has a 1 in the part number, the standard cam, tells me most likely this is an 1 3/8 thick door with a full-size mortise lock on it. That could be Corbin, it could be Sargent, it could be, you know, a number of other people that names escape me. Could be older than 100 years. Easily, definitely 19th century it could be, or you have an 1.5 door. 1.5 would be a common. If you had a 4 horizontal 5-panel door that was made in 1905, very typical that you're going to have an 1.5 thick. That's not unheard of. You're putting a mortise lock on it, or you're putting a modern mortise lock on it as well, but you'd like to have a shorter cylinder rather than have an 1.25 cylinder or 1.1/8 and a huge ring on it. Whatever the case, that is forcing you to use a much shorter mortise cylinder. Well, heck, this is it. It's a 3/4 cylinder. Now, when I say 3/4, that's the dimension from the underside of the head to the back of the cam. Okay. Best, I've seen in their catalog, they'll measure the length of the body. Okay, this would be approximately 5/8. Okay. Mortise cylinders are measured from the underside of the cam to the back of the head. That's how I always see them. Okay. Let's move on through the part number a little bit more. Now that LA that's there, if you're thinking LA, you might be thinking Sargent. This is not a Sargent LA keyway. Kaba Ilco has 2-letter designations for keyways, and we're going to dive into that. This happens to be a Lockwood 1004 with factory original look-alike bows on their keys. This is a 4-pin cylinder. Okay, literally 4 cuts on the key as well. Okay, and you can't have it any longer because 3/4 inch is too short. You can't have a 5-pin cylinder is the bottom line. This would be drilled 4 and pinned 4. Quite sure it's not drilled 5. No, definitely not going to be drilled 5. It just doesn't have the room on it to be drilled 5. The 1 in the part number, that's a reference to the cam. This is a standard cam. I would expect a short cylinder like this to have a standard cam because you're using it in something that takes a standard cam, like an old mortise lock. 04, that's going to be a reference to the finish. This is a satin brass finish on the face of this. That's a peel-away protective film that's there. And then KD in our part number just means keyed different. When you order 8 of these, they're all going to be keyed different. Unless you ordered them KA, then it'd be keyed alike, or any other arrangement of that. Let's look down below this video to the extended description and pick up some of the information that's there. First of all, the broaching, the Lockwood 1004, that's when you're looking down into the cylinder plug and not looking at the key. It's not this perspective. Imagine in your head you're looking down into the cylinder. That's what that looks like. If you have a key and you're looking at it like this, you have to, in your mind's eye, flip it around symmetrically to understand if this is adequate or not. It's also showing an 863G cam that's there. That's that number 1 in the part number, the second number 1. 3/4 inch, 4-pin Lockwood 1004, 863 standard cam, satin brass, keyed differently, made of solid brass, and the thread size is 1.5 inch diameter, or 1 5/32, 32 threads per inch, a very fine thread. They're fine because what you're threading a mortise cylinder into is generally very thin, and you want the maximum thread count in that thin space that you can accomplish. So that's why it's a ultra fine thread is what that's there. It's used, ultra fine threads are used specifically when you have a substantial amount of force and pressure and usage on the hardware, and it needs to stay together. Ultra fine threads. Door hardware is a perfect example of that. Furnished with Ilco lookalike keys, and we can do all kinds of keying on this stuff. Let's now switch to the screen view and do a deep dive into the manufacturer's product catalog. Okay, so this is the item that we are looking at here, and there is, we've gone over the extended description information and then the link to the manufacturer's page here. That's going to allow us to pull up the brass cylinder manual. And just give me a moment. Okay, the brass cylinder manual. Now, the brass cylinder manual is here. There is, starting on the 6th page or so, yes, the 6th page, page 6, we can dissect the part number. Okay, so we're dealing with a 7124. In the table, that tells us it's a 3/4 inch cylinder, 4-pin. Okay, so that's pretty easy. We've covered that. Now the LA, and here it is, LA. That's a Lockwood, not Sergeant LA. They do have Sergeant. They call the Sergeant the GB. Okay, which is nice. It's a composite keyway actually that will handle these. I think it's LA, LB, and LC that will pass through that. But we're focusing on Lockwood. So it's an LA and it's a Lockwood keyway. They show you that broaching profile. Now 1004, that's interesting. Let's do a search on the keyboard for 1004 and find all of the instances where it comes up. And it comes up 5 times in this catalog. Now, I wanted to show you brass cylinders replacement keys. So the question is, that a lot of people ask, well, I need the LA keyway, but what key blank do I order? I need to order more key blanks. Well, it's the 1004 from Kaba Ilco is what it is. The Ilco Easy number is an L1, and the B308, that's their lookalike key blank. So that's going to show up in the Kaba Ilco key blank catalog a couple of different times. Now this document allows us to do a deeper dive in terms of, it's very nice that they make this information available to us because it gives us the ability to understand it as well. Not only tell me the key blank number I want to order, but also tell me more about it. Okay, this may be a 6-pin variant, not that you would use that, but the issue that we're going to have is this 1004, whether or not that's going to be inherently a 4-pin blank. So in order to solve that mystery, we are going to hop to the manufacturer's page, and now we're going to open up the key blank catalog. That is an irreplaceable resource. Control F, find function 1004, and we're going to now search that document for this. Section 2 is all the North American regular cylinder construction, and indeed 1004 is an L1, which is our Ilco Easy number, even though initially the bow does not match the one we were sent. 1004A is a 6-pin, and they're not showing us a 4-pin version. So let's continue to scroll through here and see if we can come up with something under Lockwood that is 4-pin. So 1004. Well, that sure looks like it could be our, that is definitely our bow, and a 1000 SN could certainly be No, it's not, because I'm looking at the broaching of the cylinder in front of me. That is not going to work. Actually, it might. So what we need to figure out is what's the right key number for a 4-pin. And it could be the 1004 SN. And it's in the catalog several times. And what will happen now is it will go into, you know, it's in the catalog 71 times, the 1004. That will then take you to the cross-reference area where you can cross-reference your Ilco number to Cole, okay, and so on and so forth, to a Curtis, to a Dominion, well, not Curtis, but to a Dominion, to other manufacturers, Orion, Jet, the original key blank, you know, the Lockwood key blank. Now, when I was sliding around earlier as well, I went to the Lockwood page and pulled up some catalogs that we have here. We have archival catalogs, 1953. I'm going to fire that up. That's probably going to be, oh, it's not so bad. So let's see if we can find, Kaba Ilco tells us that the original key blank number was B308. I think that's the original blank. No, it's the Ilco lookalike. Well, let's look at the Lockwood book and see. So finding a keyway in here, and it may not be in here, but they spend a lot of time talking about projects they've done with very little detail. Okay, I'm going to call the factory while I pause this video and see if I can get that answer. And I indeed called the factory, but I realized as I was speaking to the factory that I didn't need to speak to them, because if we recall back to the very earliest part of this video where I showed the original key, indeed it has stamped on it 1004 SN. So this is absolutely the key blank that you would order in a 4-pin variant. Literally this one. Okay, so very interesting. Now, for fun, I pulled up that 1932 catalog from Lockwood, and I can actually do a find function on my keyboard, and I happen to know that this is their 308B keyway, and I can cycle through here. Actually, it's 308 space B, and I'll get to the 210th page of this document, and there's that key blank from almost 90 years ago. That's that keyway. Okay, really nice to have archival catalogs. If not for the interest of history alone, but for doing research. So how far back does this keyway go? Who could tell? Who would know? I've got a catalog from 1894, so you can definitely dig in there and search more about this. But back to the matter at hand. We've talked about the keyway. We've talked about the value of the Kaba Ilco key blank catalog. Now let's dive back to the brass cylinder manual. I'm going to close these because I forget where I am. Brass cylinder manual. Okay, so we know that we're dealing with that 7124. We got to get to page 6. We know that we've discussed the LA. Okay, now we're talking about the cam, the color, and the keying. That's all on the next page. The cam, we know that we're doing an LA, that's the keyway, then the number 1. You need a standard cam or put a number 1 there. If for some reason you wanted to make that cylinder work in a Schlage L-Series lock, order it with a 15. If you were doing a really cool Kaba Ilco deadbolt, their low-profile deadbolt, you need that fantail cam, order the 18. You wanted to stick that into a 4070 Adams Right, which is not the same as the other, as the MS cam. Adams Right has 2 cams. This is the one that works 99.9% of everything they do. Then there's the stubby standard cam. Okay, every once in a while you're going to bump into a Marks or an Arrow. I think this is going to be the one for Arrow. I do bump into Yale every once in a while with that long, funny cam. Obviously, Corbin Russwin. Okay, so those are your cam options. Now finish. This is in the 04 satin brass. You can see from this chart of 15 different finishes that there are options when it comes to finishes. Now, not all of them are going to be stock, and in fact, getting a 3/4 inch cylinder is probably going to be quite a challenge in anything other than the Lockwood arrangement. But actually, what would be interesting, back to that Lockwood catalog, if you scrolled through here and got up to their mortise locks, yeah, you're going to see, very interesting, isn't it? 1932 catalog, and they still have barrel keys. That's called a barrel key. Or pardon me, it's a bit key, not a barrel key. That's a bit key. So they'll still have bit key construction alongside pin tumbler construction. Very interesting that in 1932 they still offered that. Last time I think Corbin had all of that in the same catalog may have been 1880 something, and after that, the bit and barrel keys really fell to the wayside. But really, really, really interesting that these two significantly different technologies are side by side, even in 1932. So our finish, lots of options. Again, they're not all going to be stock. It might be a challenge to even find something that's going to be in stock in something other than an LA Keyway, and I can quickly check our inventory to see what else there may be in a 7124. Yeah, it's going to be LA only. I'm not seeing anything other than LA in a Keyway. Satin chrome, oil rub bronze, satin brass. But other than that, it's LA Keyway only. And that's because, why are we constrained to an LA Keyway? We're constrained to a 4-pin cylinder. We're constrained to a key blank that is available in a 4-pin length. Now, sure, you could take a Schlage 5-pin, a 35-100, and grind that down to be a 4-pin blank. The problem is the factory, you know, I don't know if they would run a Schlage composite through a broaching in a 4-pin length cylinder. They might, but I'm thinking they probably won't, because the shoulder stop, you know, the distance from the shoulder to the center of each pin, that all has to be prepped accordingly. I've never asked them. That's pretty crazy. But I could imagine that you have a facility full of 1.5-inch doors, and you want mortise locks, and you need to have mortise cylinders, and they don't want 1.25-inch length mortise cylinders, so it's possible. So back to the finishes, you can see there are lots of options. Might be restrictive in terms of what's available. Or if you needed black aluminum, it can be made, but they're probably going to need a box of 10. Now, to the keying that's here, the factory can do, at no charge, they can send them out key to like, key different, key to like in groups of 2, or in 4, or O-bitted. That's where they're going to put a 0 pin, according to the Lockwood system, in each of the chambers, and then you're going to receive key blanks. And that's nice, because if you're going to rekey this material, why would you want randomly cut keys? You're going to definitely want blanks, so that you can originate your own blanks. You would need to get a depth and spacing chart for that. And what's interesting, in the interest of doing very deep dives on this cylinder, let's open up the manufacturer's page in our site and then search for HPC. Depth and spacing charts by manufacturer. That will open up the manufacturer's depth and spacing charts. And if I do a find function for Lockwood, let's see if it's in here. I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, there's something in here. They can definitely do some Lockwood. They have descriptions of Lockwood that I'm not familiar with. And if I was going to start with something, I would start with this Lockwood 015 increment, which would mean it'd be a 2-step system. They go from depth 0 to a 9, but they then have a couple of even longer pins. up here. I'm not familiar with Lockwood, but if I was going to guess, this could be a depth and spacing chart. So if you were cutting keys with a Fromen cutting machine, you'd have the data, assuming this was accurate. I do not know if it is, because I've never originated Lockwood 4-pin, so I don't know. But that would be a way to get some information on that as well. Okay, let's close that up. The keying, as we were talking, they can master key it, Grandmaster key it, Construction Master key it. I don't know how they Construction Master. I think it's the two-piece key system with a pull tool, or a control key they call it. You know, are you going to need to ever construction key 3/4-inch cylinders? I've never heard of it. Technically possible. There's no question it's possible. Question will be, will they do it based on the quantity you're asking for? So that wraps up, and plus also the key work. We can do all of that here as well. Although I'd have to discuss that to see, you know, what you have with this cylinder is cut keys, so you can take the cut key information off the key and compare it to that depth and spacing chart to see if it matches up, and getting you to a point where you can focus on, you know, one of those areas. Those Lockwood catalogs are fun. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Okay, hopefully we've provided some information, and not too terribly much, but this video is going to serve as that review, dimensional review, visual review. It's a 3/4 cylinder. This should immediately be striking you as something that's awfully small. Awfully small. Okay, so there's a link below this video to that manufacturer's page for Kaba Ilco, where you can review the brass cylinder manual. You can review the key blank catalog. You can review their catalog on aluminum storefront hardware. You can review their catalogs on their key cutting tools, their key machines. Kaba Ilco is the 044. Probably every locksmithing shop has that. What I appreciate most about Kaba Ilco is that excellent technical support that they provide. At least to me they do. And I say thank you. The high quality. This is made of solid brass. The tolerances between the brass plug and the brass housing are very nice and tight. That affords you incredibly smooth operating. Smooth. Just smooth. When you pin these, you have to pin them spot on. Don't use an 005 kit. It's not going to work with a nice brass cylinder like this. The only one thing I don't like is they get them screws on these cams really, really tight. There have been times I've had to drill those out because I could not get it rotated, and naturally I stripped it, and then I had to drill it out. So be mindful. That's a 440 thread or a 348, just for fun fact. It's either a 440 or a 348. I forget. It's one of the two. It might be 348. Anyway, really smooth operation. I'm partial to Kaba Ilco because it's a confluence of really great value and quality, support, and the stuff is inexpensive. Where are you going to buy a solid brass cylinder for this sort of money? You won't get an OEM. And I look to use Kaba Ilco every single chance I get, because it's very high quality, backed by very high quality people. And it's reasonably priced, very reasonably priced. I believe they're manufacturing much of this is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And if you have any questions on the Kaba Ilco 7124 cylinder, in any keyway, in any color, in any cam configuration, Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. Thank you very much.